Hey, everybody. Today I've got Mark Amtower with me. He's the founder and partner of Amtower and Company. Welcome, Mark.
Andy, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was good. We had a conversation a few weeks ago. It was a good conversation. Um, and why don't you share a little bit about yourself, kind of your background and what you focus on? And
Okay. Well, my degrees are in American literature, so I'm qualified to either teach or read or research. But um, I started my company in 1985. Um, I had dabbled around the edges of the government contracting world, which is where I live and work. Um, Prior to that, but in after a few gigs, I decided number one, I didn't want to work for anybody else again, and number two, nobody was treating marketing to the government as a separate discipline. There's some very distinct nuances to it. So I thought this is pretty cool. I'll stay here for a while, and 39 years later, I'm going here for a while.
yeah, 39 years later, you're still 32.
Yeah, there you go.
There's always a golden year that we like. Hey, one thing I wanted to point on because I've had conversations with people because we've talked to other people around like non-traditional paths to consulting, and I like the fact you brought up that your degree was in American literature because I think one thing I found over the years is that there's a lot of people who go into consulting. There's the traditional directions of consulting, computer science, accounting, engineering, where people kind of are kind of naturally kind of flow into that area. But I find that there's a lot of people who take what I always call a non-traditional path. Just they've got different backgrounds. They may even had been a teacher or been in medical services or something like that, where they go into into consulting. And I like that because I think there is sometimes a little bit of a fear with people when they go, hey, I'm not an engineer, I don't have that background, or I'm not in accounting, so how can I do this? But I do think that there's a lot of skills that what I refer to as non-traditional, the non-traditional path. So maybe could you share a little bit about that? Because I think that to me, that's a little bit of an interest to some of the listeners as well, because a lot of them kind of, I think, have that. So
Yeah. So for me, in graduate school, I was a telemarketer. So I would be the guy way back in the late 70s, early 80s, who would call you at dinner time to renew your magazines. Um, and you get used to being on the phone and you get used to rejection. But you develop kind of a fearless attitude, because if you don't like rejection, if you can't handle rejection, you're not going to do it. So that translated for me into a couple of day jobs. I sold management training and IT training to Fortune 100 and government accounts. That was kind of an introduction to the market. I worked at an ad agency for a short time. I was the first circulation director of government computer news. And that's when I decided, after having looked around, nobody was treating marketing to this place as a separate entity. My biggest fear, and probably everybody's biggest fear coming in, is how do I create a pipeline? I'm not going to have that regular check anymore. Can I pay the rent? Can I pay my insurance? Can I buy gas?
yes,
Um, so those are things that you have to address. So hopefully, before you start a journey like that, you've got enough of a bankroll to give yourself a decent runway, because it doesn't happen overnight. That anybody who's, I mean, some consultants can start off quickly because they leave someplace that needs them, so they're brought back as a consultant. That doesn't last that long, and it doesn't guarantee future business.
yes,
So
yes.
your ability to create enough awareness about who you are and what you do comes into play damn near first thing.
Yes. Yeah, I was always told that when I was working for consulting companies and before I went on my own, that was one thing that I was always told that your first contract is the easiest because you typically aren't going to leave. Like if you're working for somebody, you're not going to leave until you get that contract. It's the subsequent contracts that are the toughest because you've got to time things, you've got to build up um, some sort of a pipeline, some sort of awareness of where you're at. And the people that do that, the sooner somebody does that, the better for sure. So I know for you, one of the things I think you mentioned there is that you saw a niche in the market where you saw it where others weren't um, hitting that marketing. So can you kind of just share a little bit about how you saw that, how you went about that, and then how you started to build out that expertise?
Well, when you start to sell into the government, you start to pay attention as much as you can to the ecosystem. And this was before the web. So, I couldn't go on LinkedIn and scope out my competitors. I could read the trade publications and see what was going on. But, back then there was no group of marketers for getting together to discuss federal marketing. The closest it came was B2B magazine, which was, I think, an Adweek publication, was a magazine for business to business marketers. And that was around in the 80s and 90s, pre-web. So that was a great educational tool for me. But again, nobody in there was writing about marketing to the government. So I'm thinking, and I looked in bookstores when Amazon finally came around. I looked in there. Nobody was writing books about doing business with the government. Before my first book came out in '05, there was only one book that I could find on Amazon, and that had to do with contracts, how to write a contract. Um, so, it when Jack Trout and Al Reese said it best, in one of their books, The Differentiation, Positioning, The Battle for Your Mind. Um, you know, when you see a niche that is unoccupied, you have the ability to be first. Now,
Mm.
most people and companies who are first usually end up with arrows in their back. Fortunately, I probably had some, I ignored them, and I just plowed ahead. So I was the first person to start writing about this. I was the first person to start speaking about this. I mean, there were marketing pros inside companies, but even the ad agencies, marketing to the government was kind of an adjunct activity, even here in DC.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, and that's a big thing. One is the awareness, and I've been listening a lot around like well, artists have this where they get a sort of an epiphany or there's some uh, idea that comes to them, and they'll talk about, does it come from a muse, does it come from the universe, where does it come from? And then there's like, I mean, we could just call it all awareness, because the awareness comes, it hits us, and then we go, hey, there's a gap there. I've got an idea, there's a gap, and then I need to fill it. And so the one thing that it is, we can all see gaps. I remember back in the day when somebody said, man, it would be great if somebody had all of the movies ever produced online where we could just order them on TV, right? And
Yeah,
so, there's a piece where so the idea is there. It's difficult to kind of pull that off if you kind of a regular person, but we're fed with those messages in our area of expertise, or the kind of the playgrounds we play in. So how did you go about building out that expertise? Because I know you said you probably had some, I don't want to say flaws, but some things that you were working through, and maybe some gaps and some things, but working through that expertise, because if you're sort of plowing the way, you're sort of the first person, you know,
yeah.
going through.
Yeah, well, I've had to morph a number of times. So in the '80s until the mid '90s, uh, the marketing in this market was driven by three primary things: big events, traditional PR, and direct mail. Nobody remembers direct mail. but I started compiling very targeted lists of key feds in the market and selling it on a little D-base program. And that was bread and butter for me. And I started getting paid for advice, which was truly manna. Um, but and I knew that there were problems with mail delivery in the federal government because, the mailman with a bag doesn't walk up to the front door of the Department of Commerce and say, "Here's your mail today." There's two semis that drop off twice a day. There's 4,000 damn people in that building. So was all the mail getting through? No. So I did two things. I started going down to mail rooms to see how mail was distributed and trying to determine by talking to the mail managers why a lot of stuff wasn't. So I found out very early that there are codes in each agency, and there's no uniformity, or there wasn't any uniformity to this. There were codes that you had to have in the address to get the mail routed. Otherwise, they would try to research it, but there was so much stuff to research that they'd only, go to 1 o'clock and then the next delivery comes in. So everything from the earlier delivery is tossed and they go to the next one. So I knew that. Then I started an association of mailers to the federal government, and I got all of the publications. There weren't that many. There were 3 or 4 major publications at the time. I got them all to join the association. So we had and the companies that were mailing catalogs. So they were the big mailers, companies like CDW. Um, so I got these companies to work with me so we could actually have a forum to meet with mail managers to discuss the issues. Um, so that taught me, when there's an issue, understand everything you can about it, then create a forum to resolve the issue.
Yeah. I like that. I like that approach because you're finding each problem that comes up. And for somebody who's listening and thinks that, man, semi loads worth of mail showing up to a building, um, it's true. I haven't done a lot of work for the federal government, but I know clients who have, and there's some departments that will have 2 or 3 people whose job it is to shred material. So the
Yep.
amount of data and the amount of hard copy paper that comes through, or um, back in the day where telephone bills would come in on a pallet, it would come in 25 boxes for a company, and it would be like just rolls and rolls of paper. This is stuff that Mark had to work through, and I think that we're using that. So somebody who's looking today goes, okay, yeah, paper, but we have those same issues today. It's how do we get the message
Well, now
delivered
it's
where we
not the
want.
mailroom. Now it's the webmasters and spam filters.
Yes. Yes.
So same issue, and it's funny because when email came in and killed my list business, I had to morph in a big way. But one of the companies that I was advising at the time was a company that helped businesses and government agencies with that spam issue. So it was a company called Surf Control out of Salt Lake City. I actually got to go to Salt Lake City for the first time. That was fun.
Yeah.
Um, so, um, you know, I understood the mechanics of the spam issue, and I identified a group called the Federal Webmasters that you're not going to find in a directory of associations. But digging around, I found these people, and I said, "Hey, can me and my client come in and talk to you?" Boom.
Yeah.
Your monthly lunch.
Yes.
So we didn't go in to pitch, we went in to learn and to share.
Yeah. I like that because one of the things that I think I'm a big believer in becoming a specialist, and we've had conversations, we had podcasts on it before around becoming a generalist versus a specialist. And the way I've always seen it work, and I believe is we generalize in some area because we have to have some foundation of skills to become a specialist. But when we're a specialist, even when we're a generalist, the one big thing is we have to be a constant learner, because we'll come across people where we're going, hey, I never knew that, right? There's an area of expertise that I didn't know, right? Or there's people used to refer to, like, are you an inch thick and a mile wide, right? Or an inch wide and
Yeah,
a mile deep.
right.
And I think when we get to that mile deep, well, somebody knows, a mile and 1 foot deeper. So, or there's someone who knows a piece of information. So I think that constant learning is important, because when we go in trying to say, okay, what can I learn here? Then that's where we build that depth of knowledge.
Yeah, yeah. So what we're really starting to talk about there is building out a demonstrable area of subject matter expertise.
Yes.
So if you're not a subject matter expert and you're a consultant, by definition, you are a generalist.
Yes.
And my research and just, eyeballing the universe at large, generalists are not what people are looking for anymore.
Yes.
Not in certainly not in my market.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I agree. And I think that one of the things, I know some individuals who are like in the IT world, where they were they were generalists. They knew a lot about it, a lot of different things. And what they ended up doing was they morphed into becoming what we call a system architect. So their knowledge then became, hey, I've got a really good knowledge across the system. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be the expert in how all these pieces work together, and I'm going to go out and sell myself in that area. But they had to kind of find that little niche to say, wait a second, I can't just know a lot about, or a little about a lot of things. I need to say, bundle that together and go, hey, I know a little about a lot of things, or enough that I can actually direct people, solve problems, make sure I can call BS when I'm hearing it, and then
Yeah,
make sure that the experts are doing what they need to do. But yeah, I think the goal always is to become a specialist, um, and finding that layer area of expertise, and just keep learning and working for it through it. So yes.
yeah, and just because you have found an area of expertise doesn't mean that you're not going to have to morph somewhere along the line. So in the 80s, I was literally the king of direct marketing to government. I knew more about this stuff than anybody. When Netscape ruined my life with Navigator in 1995, I, I had to morph.
Yeah.
Um, hey, that's my list business you just shot, dude. Um,
Yeah. Yes.
and
Yes.
then when Web 2.0 came around, late 90s, early 2000s, I'm going, wow, this is just a weird world. How
Yes.
do I deal with it?
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing you keep pointing out is that as things change, because things are going to keep evolving, like we live in a world where, it's changing, and it's changing fast. Uh, that you keep sort of pivoting, and I kind of hate that word pivoting, but you keep really changing, and taking, figuring out, okay, this is changing. How do I continue my business, or what do I morph my business into, so that I can continue to provide a, a specialized service.
Right. I can't leave the marketing realm because that's what I do.
Mhm.
So how is marketing impacted by, losing direct mail? Events are still with us. PR is still with us. They've morphed too. COVID drove events to virtual events. Now we're back to a mixed world of virtual and live. Um, but each of these things impacts the world of marketing. So in 2007, David Meerman Scott wrote his first version of the new rules of marketing and PR. And that woke my butt up in a big way because what he was talking about was the deployment of all of these Web 2.0 tools so that you could become your own publisher and disseminator of information. And hopefully it would be good information.
Yeah.
So I had at that point I've been on LinkedIn for 21 and a half years, uh, 20 and a half years, sorry, a long damn time. Uh, um, but those first couple of years, I was in the first 250,000 people on LinkedIn. There was nothing to do.
Yeah.
Um, and but when David's book came around, he didn't talk about LinkedIn at all. But he was talking about my face, our Facebook, my space,
MySpace.
whatever yeah, that
Yep.
thing. And but also about blogs and wikis and video and all of these really cool things where you could publish your own stuff. So I took a lot of what he was saying and applied it to LinkedIn.
Mm. Yeah.
And it is a B2B platform. I turned it into, for me, a B2G platform. And I have been when LinkedIn started their Pulse, the ability to publish articles, I was a beta because I was already pushing out as much stuff as I could pre-Pulse. So they asked if I wanted to play. Yeah, I'm going to say no to that. I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've been publishing on LinkedIn. I probably have about 240 articles just on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Yeah.
And posts, I probably have another 500 plus posts.
Mhm.
So your activity on LinkedIn, as long as it's value add, can help you develop and define your area of expertise and explain it to people who might care or need it.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, I use LinkedIn as well. And one thing that LinkedIn, remember when it first started, I mean, it was I mean, they called it a networking tool, but it was a glorified resume
Yep,
spot.
it was built
And
for HR.
yes, yes, and even now there are a lot of individuals who think that it's a job search site. They think it's a place for their resume. And I think the people who have taken advantage of LinkedIn, and I encourage everybody if you're not on LinkedIn, to be on it and to be active on it. Look for connect with people, read their posts, be a critical thinker of the information, um, and and post like you said, value add content, because I think a resume in itself, what we're trying to do is get across who we are, what we can contribute, what value we can add. Well, we can do that through posting content, and that actually is far more valuable, because we if somebody goes, oh, I could see how this person thinks, and I could see what this person knows, or at least the direction of where they're thinking. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I think that. And how often, I guess, I guess, would you want to share anything else on that front?
Well, elements of your profile. Oftentimes, your LinkedIn profile is the first impression you're making with somebody. So, if you don't have graphics, if you don't have a headshot, the background banner behind your head on LinkedIn is free advertising space. It blows me away how many people don't use that or use it with some generic, uh, you know,
Picture of a cat,
kind,
yeah, or a
yeah,
mountain or something. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, get a grip, go to Canva, build a background that says who you are and what you do. It's not hard. Um, so the first impression you make is hard to displace from the person who saw it. So make a really good impression with that opening screenshot, and they're then likely to read down more. Your about section. Is it a resume cut and paste, or hey, this is what I do. I have extreme passion, like yours. You have your passion for consulting and helping consultants is palpable in your profile.
Mm. Yeah. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, and I think Mark's touching on a lot of really good points, because one thing I think that the underlying message, and we're going to cover a number of topics, is that to be really a consultant in demand, we have to take it seriously. It isn't a just, well, that's in it. We don't have to be perfect, right? Nobody has to be perfect. Nobody is perfect, but we have to take it seriously. And one of the things is learning through these things to say, okay, is my LinkedIn profile up to date? Am I learning enough? Am I spending my time in the right areas? Am I writing content or thinking critically about certain topics and then sharing that information with others? This is a huge differentiator between the consultants who really struggle and the ones that are a success, or the ones that can weather the tough times, because I think that's even more so than just, okay, can I be a success, or can I be better than the other guy? It's when tough times come, can we weather those through the investment we've made over the course of months or years?
Yep. Yeah. No,
Uh,
no argument there.
how often do you share content? I've read quite a bit of your content, and but how, like, what's your sequence of do you have pretty much a consistent sequence of when you want to publish or post something, or do you kind of get into sort of a, I mean, we're all kind of different and there's things that come up, but what's your goal typically?
I coach people to develop a content calendar, yet I have yet to do so myself. How's that?
Oh,
So I publish when I have a cool idea. So I have other content outlets too. So I've been on the Federal News Network as a radio host and podcaster for almost 18 years. I write for the main contractor publication, Washington Technology. I've done that for I think 16 years. So I have outlets there too. So on LinkedIn, I try to get something out at least once a week. So I'm writing all the damn time. But to your point, I write more when something strikes my fancy or needs to be fleshed out and brought to fruition. So I did a piece on what is an influencer in the government market recently. And, it struck my attention because several months back, somebody called and said, we'd like to pay you to be an influencer for this company, and we'll write stuff for you and put your name on it and send you these checks. And I said, no. Number one, I'm not sure I'm an influencer. It was a stupid answer right there because I have been for a long time, for a variety of reasons. But, I could not let somebody else write stuff and put my name on it. Um, I've spent a long time building a reputation. And if you sell it, LeBron James can endorse stuff. Caitlin Clark is drinking Gatorade in commercials. Um, God bless them. I hope they're making a lot of money from that. We can't do that as the same way in a business to business situation. It
Yes.
just, it can destroy your credibility and your transparency quickly.
Yep. Yes.
So,
What?
yeah, go
Yes.
ahead.
Yeah, I 100% love what you just said. I had somebody one time reach out to me because there's a Haro Help a Reporter Out, where you
Yeah,
can
Peter
they
Peter
send
Shankman.
and somebody reached out to me. They said, "Hey, give me the areas that you know well, and then I'll write the information for you." And I said the same thing. I said, "Well, how are you going to write the information for me?" Well, I'll just write it based on, I'll do some research and I'll write it. I'm thinking, well, I've spent a lot of time trying to build my own writing and critical thinking capabilities. I'm not going to hand that off to someone with, like, it just does that. Why would I do that? And I think that one big, so I just said no, the same thing. It was like, no, this is my, I put too much work into this. But I think one of the big things is, even with sharing that content, is building that ability of critical thinking. I think that's one thing that, like, you're on a lot of platforms sharing a lot of information, but you're really a critical thinker that then takes those thoughts, puts them down, and then says, okay, how does this relate in life, in the business or life, or
Yeah,
and then you share that, right? So
but like you, one of the reasons I'm doing it, and often the main reason I'm doing it, is to get feedback to make me think deeper about a subject. Without that feedback, you and me aren't going to grow.
well, that's right. Yes, that's exactly right. And I think that's really the objective, which with like when we improve our critical thinking. And I think that talking is a great way to do it because we share a lot of information, but writing is one where we sit down to write and have an idea and you go, man, that's crazy. Like, you start to write it down, you put your thoughts down, you go, that was a nonsense idea. Just scrap that idea, right? And other ones you go, no, I think I'm a little bit off, but how about this, right? And it's not trying to make it fit. It's really trying to come up and say, is what I'm thinking, what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling legit? Does this really have legitimate value, not from a sales perspective, but legitimate value in in our lives, in our businesses? And then we sit there and you're right, you write it, share it with another, and the person goes, well, I see it a little different. And then you go, okay, yeah, I've learned a little bit, right? Or someone goes, oh, it might work there, but it doesn't work there. And that's really what we're trying to do, is trying to get those thoughts out and share that, and then have someone say, yeah, I might see it differently, or yeah, that's spot on. So
Yeah, I carry a moleskin to write down any idea that comes along, and I try to look at it at the end of the week to say, is this good idea, bad idea? Should I do more with it? Some of them strike me immediately, so I start writing. But before I publish, I do share it with, I have a core group of people I trust implicitly. So I'll send it out to a person or a couple people and say, hey, am I on track? Is this worth pursuing? Or is this just another Mark fantasy world and it makes no sense to anybody but me?
yeah, yeah.
And the feedback I get from them helps me to fine tune a piece to make it germane to the audience I want to reach.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah, I like that. And I like the word you said, fantasy world, because this is often where a lot of the ideas come in, right? It's sort of like, is this just some sort of like crazy fantasy that came in, or some delusional idea that came in? Or is it, again, that message from the universe, the muse, self-awareness, whatever it comes in, where I
Yeah,
go, now it's an awareness that I can actually put on paper and make it material, and make it something that I could share with others? Or is it just some cockamamie idea that just comes out of, it's just, yeah, it's just kind of
they're
just,
they're all epiphanies, but not all of them are worth pursuing.
yes, yes, exactly. Yes.
So I have a theory. I think that everybody has a country song in them and everybody has a novel in them. The question is, should they go public?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Exactly. Yes, that's absolutely right. There's a lot of thoughts or ideas that should not be shared. But a lot of them, but then a lot of them, like we said, there's a lot of them that go dormant because people are too afraid to. So it's really then, yeah, doing that work and getting that down and saying, okay, is this something? And yeah,
that's the difference. There was an article in Sally Jenkins writes stuff for the Washington Post. She writes it in the sports section. I don't follow much sports, but I follow her. And she did an article on the difference between the top level tennis players like Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, and now Sinner and some others who are coming up, and the rest. And basically, it's usually a 5 or 6 point swing per match that makes the difference. And the thing that drives the those extra 5 or 6 points is your attitude. Are you going to let a setback destroy your mindset for the rest of the game? So my thought with that was, you know, people, no, I don't like that idea. Okay, you drop it and you're never going to pursue it. Well, that was one view. You're going to let that impact you? Hell
mm,
no.
mm,
Um, I can't. I
yes, that's right. And one thing I would recommend anybody who's writing down their ideas or their thoughts, and I have hundreds, maybe over 1,000, just spit down thoughts that have come to mind. Some stuff is partially processed, some stuff has got a few lines to it, but it's to keep all of them, because sometimes an idea comes and it's not its time yet. And so it's like later the pieces fall together, or later
yep,
someone, you realize, wait a second, I had that thought, let's go find it, and let's piece it together. Um or an event occurs. That's the other thing. An event occurs, a big event that now everyone's going, hey, we need to make sense of this. And then that thought that you had 9 months ago, 2 years ago, now is actually relevant in today's world. And I would just keep it almost like an artist, or someone who's constantly writing down lyrics. Like they come up with 3 or 4 words. It doesn't make sense, but it makes sense in 3 years when they're adding up. when they're putting a song together.
You get
And
that perfect phrase in your mind, and it doesn't fit what you're writing now.
yeah,
But then, 2 years later, you're writing something and you go, I had that phrase. But
yes,
if you don't write it down, it ain't coming back.
that's right, exactly, yes, 100%. Um, So pipeline. So one of the big things you talked about was even like when someone starts and they take the journey to consulting is building out a pipeline. So what are some of your suggestions on doing that? I know content creation's one, but what are some of the things that you would recommend on going out and actually starting to try to build that pipeline out?
To define your audience and start creating venues and content that would pertain to them. So I had a huge lesson early on. I was trying to, and this goes back to the early '90s. I was trying to get in to this one company, and I thought my point of entry would be the marketing guy because he attended all of my seminars and read my stuff. Uh, and I was talking to a an advertising exec from one of the major pubs, and she laughed at me and said, "He's not your customer. The
Mhm,
CEO is your customer. That's who you should be reaching out to." I
mhm,
did, and less than a month later, I'm having lunch with the CEO, and when that marketing guy saw me walk into the office, his jaw dropped.
mhm. Yeah.
Oh my God, what's he doing here?
Yes. Yes. And that's an interesting thing is to understand. The more someone can understand, like you said, the audience, and the audience not just being, if okay, I'll use probably a really bad analogy. If someone is a female singer, and the people she's trying to sing to are 14 and 15-year-old girls, she's gonna sell. I want to sell albums and songs to them, but part of her audience, the decision makers, are the parents, right? And because the parents going to say, well, here, I'm going to give money to the 14-year-old kid, usually doesn't have their own money. So who's going to buy the tickets? Who's going to drive them to the concert? Who's going to buy the albums or the shirts or all the different stuff? So really understanding who the decision makers are and understanding that whole process versus just saying, hey, I could sell this. Who's the person I need to sell to? Well, the decision maker may be someone else, or the person who has to stick their neck out may be someone else. And you may have a lot of risk avoidance, characters inside of an organization that just will not deviate from the norm, right? They
Yep,
won't, yeah, bring in someone new, so or try something different. So,
yep, yeah. So, once you figure out who you need to reach, you've got to figure out a path to get to them. So my path is largely dependent on the size of the client. So um, if it's a small company, I'm pretty comfortable reaching out to a C-level. If it's a larger contractor, a General Dynamics or a Northrop, I can't reach out to the CEO. They won't give a crap about anything I have to say. Um, so I've got to figure out a different entry point. So
mm,
size your market too. It's easier for me to work with mid-size or smaller companies than it is for largers. I've worked with the largers before, especially when I was basically the only game in town. Now I've mentored, 50 competitors over
yeah.
the years. Um, but I don't go after the whales anymore. I'm going after, mid-sized companies, smaller companies, companies where I can get in and make an impact.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And to understand, like for those listening, there's usually a gatekeeper, right? That you have, like Mark is referring to too, of okay, how do I get to the person who's the decision maker? And if we think of like pharmaceutical reps have this, or medical reps have it, where they want to talk to a doctor, but they have to get through the doctor's head nurse, right?
Yep,
And so that's why they're showing up with, they know that she loves chocolate covered almonds. They're buying the most expensive chocolate covered almonds to let her through, let them through to go talk to the doctor. And they're making sure that the gatekeeper is taken care of. So when we look at this, it's sort of, okay, who is the decision maker and who's the gatekeeper to that? And there might be, I mean, I haven't worked in organizations where you've got multiple, like, I would assume organizations, let's say like the military or someone, there might be multiple gatekeepers that are kind of making sure, okay, each stage, no one's getting through. Um,
Mhm.
Not physically. I mean, I'm talking physical like
Right. Yeah.
controls, but yeah, that they're actually controlling. And of course, but big companies are the same. A lot of. I mean, most people can't just call up Elon Musk, even if he is the decision maker. Like you said, like a very large organization, you've got to figure out how you navigate those waters, and which is some of the fun.
Yeah.
So
I have made it a habit, especially when I was dealing with the larger companies, of connecting with executive assistants on LinkedIn and monitoring, how long they've been there, when their birthday is, all of this stuff. And, with one at General Dynamics in particular, she liked a particular kind of pen that had a highlighter twist out on one side and the pen on the other side. She just loved this thing, thought it was cool. So I made sure to show up with at least two of those every time I went in.
yeah,
Uh,
yes, yeah. Yeah, one thing I'll recommend anybody listening, if you're a consultant or you're just, it doesn't matter what type of role somebody has. I would always be very polite to the security guard in the building, the cleaning staff, the administrative assistants, right? I would always be very polite. If there's a few things. One is, um, it shows other people that you're a polite individual, because most people just walk straight by the security guard. If the cleaning staff is in early or working late, they don't acknowledge them. It doesn't even matter what language they speak. Say hi to them, wave to them, right? Like,
yep.
recognize them. They're usually a forgotten group, and someone is usually watching. This is very much like sports, where there's always scouts watching athletes, and they're watching what's your behavior. And if you want to differentiate yourself, how do you treat others? And like you said, you're recognizing the admins, because they, not just because they get you something, but that also it's a recognition to them, and they play a very important role in those organizations.
And they're extremely nice people once you get to know them.
Yeah.
And, I consider some of them good friends.
Yes. Yes. Oh yeah. It's amazing how we've been get when we had our son, we got gifts and cards from administrative assistants or assistants of executives that I had worked with, that we had a baby, and they sent cards, and it was like, man, I hadn't worked with these people for years, but they found out and they sent a card, and they were like, yeah, like an auntie or another family member, and when you recognize it isn't just about, yeah, getting things, but these are very nice people that they play an important role in the organization. They play an important role in um, our own organization as we're trying to build out our own business. So
Yep.
yes.
Yep.
And they're part of, and they're part of the audience. What you said about identifying the audience, they are a big chunk of that audience.
And go back to what you were saying about being polite to people. It doesn't cost you anything to be polite to everybody that you run across in an organization or a restaurant, whatever. And it does show an attitude of graciousness. And I think it does create part of your persona. I thank people for picking up the friggin' trash in restaurants. Thanks for doing that. Um, what's it cost me?
Yeah, yeah, yes, yes. No, that's exactly right. My daughter runs track, and the same thing. We a track meets or some. I mean, it's some. I mean, we'll have 1,000 athletes at a track meet, so there's garbage everywhere, and the guys are going around picking it up. I usually say thank you to them, and the same thing. And you see the look on their face, because again, they're walking around picking up garbage, which isn't a fun. I mean, some of
It's
them are
what they
paid.
do, but
That
yeah,
was, yeah, yeah, that's right. But it's like, somebody recognizing them. It's and that's usually the that's, like you said, it doesn't cost anything, but it's a huge differentiator when someone is acknowledged. And and these are the things when we're navigating through. It doesn't need to be overly complicated, but there are a lot of things we can do that doesn't cost a lot of money, takes a minuscule amount of effort, and it differentiates us from the people who aren't doing it. So yeah,
yeah, yeah. And don't do it just because other people are around.
yeah,
In build this into who you are.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
It improves your self view, how
Yes.
you view yourself.
Yes. 100%. That's a big part of, I mean, I find about consulting is that there's consulting from a very technical perspective where people are delivering, some sort of technical skill, which we, in some ways, we all are. What our expertise is some form of technical skill. It doesn't need to be like we're building a road or we're building a computer system, but it is the expertise we're delivering. But um, but it's not just the technical the thing. We usually are people, right? We typically like people. We like solving problems. We like seeing people succeed, organizations succeed, and like you said, to build that into our personality, that we want to say hi to people, we like people, and we can get past maybe their differences or things that irritate us about them or whatever it is, and we just
Mhm.
recognize that we have to acknowledge them and be polite to them. So yes, I like
Yeah,
that.
it's easy to do.
Yes,
It,
yes,
it is an attitudinal differentiator
yes,
because we all know people who would not thank a waiter or waitress ever.
yes, yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, I agree. um Awesome. So we covered a few good topics. Is there anything you want to share, uh, kind of with kind of the path of consultants or people going into consulting, and different things people should be aware of?
Um, Couple of things strike me. I mean, define your position in the market and be ready to morph when conditions demand change, right? But the thing that if you're going to develop a subject matter expert position in the market, it requires the content which we've discussed. But building an audience is an incremental process. It doesn't happen overnight, and nobody is known by everybody. Um, there are certain people, obviously, in the business world, the best-selling authors, but even they are not known by everybody because not everybody reads. Um, I mean, I have your book here. I have Rich Horwath's latest book, Strategic here, um, and you know, I read these because they help me. Um, and so you have to keep fine tuning you, but building the audience, share information that's germane to them, avoid the overtly feel good kumbaya cat video stuff. Save that for you, whatever the other place is,
Facebook.
Facebook.
Yeah,
Yeah, that word.
yeah,
I I don't go there anymore,
yeah.
or
I
I go
seldom
there
do.
rarely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, but the other thing is to develop that audience. When people comment on what you say, comment back,
yeah.
acknowledge that they've touched, reached out. Um, this is what shows that you actually care, that people are reading your stuff.
Yes, yeah. I agree 100%. And I think that the audience is interesting because as we develop the audience, the they will also identify different things that different opportunities that are out there. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's interesting because there are, as we interact with our audience, especially when we have like uh heartfelt, or we're really sharing openly, sometimes we have a skill that we weren't even aware that we even had. And somebody may say, oh, you're really good under pressure, or there's different things, and so you realize, wait a second, maybe I should start searching for those. Even maybe there's inner turmoil that occurs. But we can start to find these areas also that are more specialized within the area that we work at, to say, okay, look, I'm looking for these opportunities in these particular areas. Um, because our audience, especially once we develop a good relationship with them, they're usually sharing information freely because they want us to succeed. They are invested with us. So it's, yeah,
Yeah, but don't be afraid ever to say I don't know,
yeah,
but I
yes,
know somebody that might, and let me bring them into the conversation.
yes,
So if you're a consultant and you're not building a concentric circle of other people around you who fill your voids. So, I mean, I'm a marketing guy in the biggest market in the world. Nobody spends more than the US federal government. Do I know everything I need to know about that? Of course not. So my last book, Government Marketing Best Practices 2.0, I got 11 other people to do chapters for me because they do certain parts of the marketing better than me. Could I have written the whole book? Yeah. Would it have been as good? Hell no. So
Yeah.
know and cultivate these relationships and create a venue to get together with them to mutually share ideas,
Yes.
and help people flesh out their ideas. They will help you flesh out yours. Um, bring in other experts to speak about things that are, AI. Do I know a lot about AI? No. Am I using it? Sort of. I'm getting more familiar and more comfortable with it all the time. But, I know a bunch of AI experts who can guide me and guide my clients into a more appropriate usage of the generative AI tools.
Mm.
So, you not only have to build an audience, you have to build a network of peers.
Yes. Yes, I 100% believe in that. Yeah, and that's how you and I met. It's
Yep.
you reached out to me and we talked, um and I think that building out that network, like you said, that network of peers is critical. I mean, we've talked about this before on our podcast around, when people are looking for work, they'll usually there's some people that reach out of the blue and go, "Hey, do you have any work?" And it's like, you know, we we've never talked, or we haven't talked in 12 years, like, drop me a line once in a while, right? Like, and but building out that network, and like you said, building those relationships, it doesn't need to be people talk every week, but we do need to build the relationship, know a little bit about each other, and share. And a lot of it is just, I mean, it's a different level of, I'm going to say a different level of friendship, because usually, I find, I mean, some of my best friends are the people that I found through networking and through business, and it's great to know people in different cities and different skill sets and different industries. It's, to me, I find it fascinating, so I'm
Yeah.
always learning. Yeah.
Some of my best friends are LinkedIn friends, and we've never physically met,
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
but we share just one boatload of stuff.
Yes. Yeah, I love it. Awesome. Perfect. Well, thanks, Mark. Do you want to share anything else before we wrap up?
No, I do advise people and companies on building subject matter expert positions, but I focus on one market, the government market. So, I would say if they want help building out an expert position in the B2B world, they should probably talk to you, not me. But if they're thinking about or already doing business in the government world, reach out and connect, and we'll have a chat. The best way to reach me is through LinkedIn.
Yeah. Awesome. And we'll have Mark's contact information in the show notes. So people could just check there and reach out to Mark, and he's a great guy. So I appreciate you meet with us today. It was just a lot of really good information, and it was great to chat.
This was fun, man. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark.
Take care, Andy.
Thanks, man.